The off-season elections are due in 3 states, Kogi, Imo and Bayela, on Saturday. The contesting parties have been making meticulous, even ruthless preparations for the electoral destruction of their opponents amid the deepening cracks within the security services and fears that INEC may well be caving in under pressure as both the incumbents and their challengers attempt to tighten their grip, releasing a pandemic of intimidation in a country where electoral victory often has nothing to do with popularity, but hinges on who's got more money and can marshal the most intimidating clout. Well, for his assessment of that off-season election, I'm joined now in the studio by our guest analyst, Hamzat Lawal, founder of Connected Development, or CODE, a civil society organization that monitors elections in Nigeria. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me, Charles.
Why do you think things are so tense leading up to the governorship elections in Kogi, Imo and Bayela?
You know, it's really sad, and I think it's tense because people are now taking laws into their hands and people are now becoming more desperate. And this also tells you that because INEC have put in place measures to ensure that elections are free, fair and credible, so that results and the process of the outcome will be acceptable. So right now people are really desperate to emerge winner, and it also begs for more answers that, okay, are you actually going into office to serve the people, or you're going into office to make yourself more wealthy?
Yeah, that's a very good point. But how dangerous does that make it, given the things that you've just said?
See, Charles, this is setting a wrong precedent as a country and as a people. And this also means that we need to reflect collectively and say, what is our values? When we're going to win an election, ideally election is supposed to be a celebration of democracy.
Absolutely.
Where people express themselves freely and determine, you know, who leads their state, who leads them into more prosperity, and ensure, you know, this adequate distribution of wealth. You know, so it is really sad and unfortunate, Charles.
So, I mean, is it dangerous for you and your team who are aiming to monitor these elections?
It's dangerous for everyone. My team, as INEC accredited observers, media people, and even the electorate. It is really dangerous. Charles, from experience from the last election, 2 of my observers were beaten up. Now with the tension and all the heat of the polity in this state, you know, we're worried. But then again, this is a call to service to Nigerians. And the role of observers ensure the integrity of the process. And for us, we're not keen about the results, Charles. You know, we're not keen about results. We're keen about the process. Yeah. Because it is the process that ensures that the outcome itself is legitimate. Absolutely. The outcome itself is acceptable to the people. And our role as independent observer is to give, you know, credibility to this process, to give confidence and build more trust among INEC, stakeholders and electorate. And when you look at this election, Charles, everyone is ready except the politicians. And it's always the same thing in every election cycle. I tell people election is already on. We're just waiting for Saturday to cast the ballot, but election has started. And that's why we have deployed what we call pre-election observers. And then on Saturday, we will deploy election observers. And after election, we deploy post-election observers. Because mind you, if violence would erupt, it usually erupt when the results are being announced, or when the final results are announced and the winner declared. That's when violence erupts. But before that, what also creates that atmosphere for violence is what happens in motor parks and in marketplace. Because first, hoodlums will first need to buy this dangerous weapon, and then they need to transport them. So for us, we'll be monitoring the trends in the media and at the marketplace, the motor parks and at the marketplace, you know, watching the trends, who is buying what, when and how, and where are they transporting it to. And I must also commend the IGP of police and the Nigerian police and security architecture. We've seen how they've mobilized. You know, just 2 days ago, I sat down with some of the DIGs that was posted to this state, just to get briefing from them and also share information on what we're doing, because again, we know that for this election to be free, fair and credible, we must guarantee safety of lives and properties.
Absolutely. But I mean, as you said, you've deployed pre-election observers and so on, and I know you've been following everything that's been going on. I mean, is it right for INEC to say that they'll not count results in any polling unit where there's violence? Because it sounds like all that will do is give those who have the capacity to cause violence in their opponent's stronghold the opportunity to do that, and there'll be no counting of votes there. Somebody was suggesting on radio today that perhaps INEC instead should be saying they'll cancel the report, the result, and repeat the election the next day, and that would send a better, more potent signal.
Yes, Charles, I agree, and I think this is not a good signal for INEC. Even if you have these plans, now is not a good time to announce it, because what you do as INEC is you are now giving people who have ulterior motive to attack specific polling units.
Absolutely.
You know, but I also think this is a charge to security agencies. Yes, we know that 85% of our previous reports during the 2023 elections, we have at least 3 unarmed police personnel within the polling area. I think what's also important is to provide corridor support, because ideally you're not supposed to carry firearms when you're protecting people around the polls, but you need to provide corridor security support, which means they have to have firearms. So I think this is a charge, an opportunity for security agencies to truly prove themselves from the commitment of the president and also the IGP of police.
And you mentioned obviously INEC, and I mean, and your concerns about sort of what they've just said about not counting results and all the rest of it in any polling unit where there's violence. I mean, would you say that this is the last roll of the dice for INEC in terms of redeeming its very tattered image after the last general election?
You know, Charles, let's also be fair to INEC as an independent umpire. They need to also guarantee the safety of their personnel, because they're also deploying ad hoc staff. And some of their officers from HQ would also be on the field, monitors. So let's be fair to them. But you know, Charles, for me, I like to go down memory lane. I like to look at 2007 election, 2011 elections. You know, I like to look at previous elections before now, where even before we go to the polls, results are already been announced. So let's be fair to INEC. And if you look at, you know, 1 week after the general election, they have tried to redeem their image. But as we also learn and look at what are those gaps, what are those, you know, gaps that we need to approach the 10th National Assembly for, because we all agree we must have electoral reform. We must have a reform that takes us to 2027, that guarantees, you know, freedom, that also guarantees that trust that is now broken between electorate and INEC itself. But, you know, let's be fair and let's look at the lessons we've learned, where we're coming from, where we are now, and where we want to go.
Good point. And obviously, as you said, you've deployed sort of pre-election observers. What's the mood like in those states ahead of the elections on Saturday?
To be truthful, it's tensed. You know, it's tense, particularly in Imo State. You know, I'm really glad that...
where, sorry?
Imo State.
Okay,
it's a bit tense in Imo State. I'm glad that in Bayelsa State, the tension have reduced. And, you know, earlier today, they signed a peace accord in Kogi State. So, again, I believe this will change the mood as we go into Saturday. And for me, I also plan to be on ground in the field, because what we're doing is to set up a situation room hub in Lokoja, where we're taking reports real time from the field, analyzing them, and we're checkmating, you know, fake news, misinformation, disinformation, and looking at the process. And when we say looking at the process, we're looking at INEC's guideline, 2022 Electoral Act, and what is stipulated the role of security agencies, INEC, you know, officials, other civil society, political actors. Because, you know, during elections, this party agents sometimes interfere with the process. So for us, we're looking closely, and also how technology will play a role, because BVAS was a game changer, is a game changer, and will play a critical role.
And also IREV.
Yes, IREV, and INEC have also, you know, committed that it would work. So let's electorate be at peace, and we don't need this tension, you know, Charles. And you see, particularly what is happening in Kogi State, it's really sad. You see, before now, there was no tension in Kogi State. You know, Kogi State was relatively peaceful. Just few weeks to the election, all of this tension. And I want to call on the political actors. You know, if people die, then who are you going to govern over? You know, so this is a time for celebration of democracy. And come to think of it, every candidate in all of these states, they're from the state. I believe that they have the best interest of their state, irrespective of their political leaning. And for us at Connected Development, we'll be on ground to watch them closely.
Yeah, and just finally, a final word from you. What would be your best expectation to emerge from these elections? I mean, I'm not talking about in terms of the candidate.
Charles,
or candidates?
This election is about citizens. It's about the power of the people. My expectation is, and when you look at data from INEC, over 80% of electorate have collected their PVC. On Saturday, I expect people to go out and cast their ballot. I'm confident that military and other security agencies will deploy their personnel to guarantee safety of life and property. So the expectation is come out and cast your vote. And we would deploy USABI to ensure that all the processes are checkmate and the results itself are protected. So we're not doing follow the money this time, we're following the results and the processes.
Well, we're very glad that people like you have the courage and the commitment to do the work that you're doing. Hamzat, thank you very much indeed. Hamzat Lawal is our guest analyst for today. He's founder of Connected Development, or CODE, a civil society organization that monitors elections in Nigeria and election-related matters.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Charles.
That's it for this edition of Arise Prime Time. Join us again tomorrow. From me and the entire team here in Abuja, bye-bye and thank you for watching.